Good evening. Welcome to the Cabarrus County Schools Board of Education July 8th, 2024 work session and business meeting. We have just reconvened from closed session. So we are going to move to 4.01. I'll call for a motion to approve the closed session minutes.
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Lindsay, a second by Mr. Walter. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. I call for a motion 4.02 to approve the personnel report. Don't do that. We are going to need to add a closed session to our agenda since we weren't able to get that done. So we'll do that after this meeting is over. So we'll move to 5.01, our Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll please stand. Thank you. Before we adopt the agenda, board members, we are going to add a closed session after this meeting. So with that change, I need a motion to adopt the agenda with a closed session added at the end.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Have a motion by Ms. Lindsay, a second by Mr. Floyd. Is there any discussion, board members, about the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is adopted as presented. Board will move to 7.01, approval of minutes. These are for open session for June 3rd, 10th, and the 24th. I need a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a motion by Ms. Lindsay, a second by Mr. Floyd. Are there any discussion about the minutes? All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The open session minutes are approved. We will move to 8.01, board chair comments. The Board of Education would like to welcome our new teacher of the year, Caleb Snell. We're really happy to have you, Mr. Snell, joining us here at the dais, and hope that you'll be able to chime in and give us your opinion about different things as they come up during our board meetings. Would you have anything to say?
Can you hear me? Okay. This is my first time talking to a microphone. Am I holding this down to always speak? Okay. I'm excited to be here. Once again, I'm Caleb Snell. I work at Hickory Ridge High School in the social aids department. I'm looking forward to following my predecessors and working alongside the board and Dr. Kopicki and giving my voice whenever I'm asked. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to 8.02 board where we'll get our superintendent comments with Dr. John Kopicki.
Thank you, Mrs. Adcock. And Caleb, again, welcome on behalf of the board and Cabarrus County Schools. We're thrilled to have you and look forward to working with you as well. Thank you. Just a few brief updates, mostly some time issues to make sure that our dates, our public is aware of our dates and our schedule coming up. I would also like to take this opportunity to encourage our students to continue to read over the summer and to remind all of our parents and community that our local Cabarrus County libraries are a great place to explore the adventure of reading with their 2024 summer reading program. And this program runs through August 1st. And for more information, please visit the county's website at cabarruscounty.us and search for summer reading program. Again, our libraries have great reading programs. We encourage all of our students and public to participate in those. Some quick dates. It's hard to believe it's July 8th and we are in a downhill stretch into a new school year. And on August the 5th, our RISE conference for secondary teachers will take place at 8:30 a.m. at J.M. Robinson. We will also have a Board of Education work session that evening. On August 7th, Tuesday, the RISE conference for elementary teachers will take place at 8:30 a.m. again at J.M. Robinson. On August the 7th, Wednesday at 6:30, we will have our district-wide middle school open houses. And on Wednesday also, that's from 4:30 to 6:30 for the middle schools. Again, 4:30 to 6:30 for our middle schools. And then on August 7th, again, from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, we'll have our district-wide high school open houses. So we encourage all of our parents to please attend those open houses with their children. And then on Thursday, August 8th, is the first day of school for early colleges. And August 8th is also the district-wide elementary school open house that takes place from 5 to 7 p.m. And then on Monday, August the 12th, we have our Board of Education business meeting. And then our first day of school is Tuesday, August the 13th. On that note, our back to school webpage is active, and here you'll find everything you need to begin preparing for the start of school in August, including calendars, supply lists, immunization information, and more. And we ask you to visit that webpage at www.cabarrus.k12.nc.us and click the Back to School tab at the top of the page. Again, just remind our community of some of those upcoming dates, because before we know it, they'll be upon us quickly, and we will be back to school. Thank you, Mrs. Adcock.
Thank you, Dr. Kopicki. Board will move to 8.03 with our board attorney comments. Mr. Eisenhower, do you have anything to share?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will move to 9.01, our committee reports. Board, is there any committee updates from anyone at this time? Ms. Escobar.
I just wanted to share that the interns have been selected. I'm in the process of communicating that because it's the summer. It's been a little tricky on my part. But if anyone is interested or concerned, feel free to email me, but you should be getting an email. If you don't have access to your email of the summer, it's okay. I will text you and get you the information as well. But we're looking at doing orientation for the interns on August, I believe it's the 19th. It's a Monday.
Thank you, Ms. Escobar.
How many interns do we have this time?
It's a little over 20, and split between doing either just the fall semester or the spring. And we have increased the diversity of the schools represented, so I'm excited about that too.
Great job. Thank you for that. Okay, board members, we'll move to 9.02, our policies for first read with Dr. Sandy Ward. Welcome, Dr. Ward.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing great and had a good 4th of July holiday. I have 3 policies up for review. I did not receive any questions, so I'll go right into my summary. The first policy up for review is 1310-4002, parental involvement. This policy actually fell under the Parents' Bill of Rights, and it is being updated every single month. Every time, so you're going to continue to see this one quite a bit. Most of these things here were strongly recommended, which, as we review each month, means that it is somewhere in law and policy somewhere, but we wanted to make sure that it was embedded in this policy specifically. Any questions there? Okay. The next policy we'll look at is going to be 4040-7310, which is student-staff relations. This policy came about, it's not required this month, but it is recommended that we change some language. We've added some references to different policies. This one we've also seen come back a few times, and so any questions on 4040-7310?
No questions.
Okay. And our last policy this evening was, let's see, it's 5023-6127-7266. It is entitled Emergency Epinephrine Auto Injector Devices. Mr. John Basalis, before leaving our district, collaborated with Cabarrus Health Alliance and Mr. Eisenhower over here, our attorney, to add in some information on this policy. It had not been updated in about 15 years, and so we wanted to add in some relevant health policies so that we can keep our students safe. Any questions on this one?
Any questions, board members? No questions.
Okay.
So we will see these again in August.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, board members, we'll move to 10.01. Our guest speakers address the board. It's now time for public comment. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak, and an individual speaking for a group may be allowed up to 5 minutes at the direction or discretion of the board chair to express interests and concerns related to the official business of the board and school district. The speakers will be called in the order in which we received the request. A person may not be substituted for a speaker, nor may one speaker donate time to another speaker. If a speaker runs out of time, then the speaker may leave the additional information with the board clerk. Statements reasonably perceived to be disruptive or threatening to the orderly operation of the meeting shall not be permitted. Any limitation on public comment shall be viewpoint neutral. The board chair has the authority to rule the speaker out of order. If a speaker or attendee willfully interrupts, disturbs, or disrupts this meeting and refuses to leave after being asked by the board chair, then the speaker may be escorted out or could be arrested for trespassing or disrupting an official meeting. Board members will not respond to individuals to address the board except to request clarification of points made by the presenter. So we'll start with our guest speaker number 1, which is Deborah Allen.
Is there a particular mic that I should be speaking
The one
to?
here has the red, yes. Welcome, Miss Allen.
Hi. I was a teacher in New York for over 30 years, and I came to North Carolina because I wanted a change. However, all I've encountered is a smaller version of the same New York problem. Here in Cabarrus, our school staff speaks the same language, and everyone adheres to the PC mandate so we can continue on the status quo. What I'm seeing in Cabarrus County is what I've witnessed in New York: politically motivated decisions made at the expense of families. My former school district jumped on the redistricting bandwagon to deal with overcrowding issues, and it did not improve the problem, but negatively impacted the other schools. Many families up and moved. Recent studies show that redistricting can increase educational inequality, increase segregation within schools, and hurt already disadvantaged students and communities. In addition, it does not save taxpayers money. Since the decision to redistrict was approved, teachers have been requesting transfers, and some are leaving altogether. Teachers are flexible. We go with the flow when the policy acronyms change. For years, we manage the same liberal issues packaged under new educational buzzwords. I heard the parents who spoke out against the closing of Beverly Hills Elementary. Though the data shows 50% of parents voted for option C, it has been difficult to find parents who are in agreement with the board's decision. Many residents say that community input was completely disregarded. This decision was made after consulting for 1 year with the California-based firm Cooperative Strategies. Is this where we're going? California? Do they live here? Do they care about what we need and want? I believe the amount agreed was $958 million. And when asked how that would be paid, the answer was as funding sources are identified and become available. Families are already stretched thin. Will our taxes be raised as the funding sources? We were told that realignment positions the district to prepare for future growth. Are we putting the cart before the horse? Are we spending money we don't have on future growth yet to be determined? I can't imagine that building a new school, scattering students, and demoralizing our community is more effective than restoring an old school that has been serving the community for decades. It simply does not appear that a majority of parents gave overwhelming support to a plan that doesn't exist, where many questions remain unanswered. A 4-3 board vote does not show full support either. I pray as a Concord resident and employee of this school district that moving forward, the majority of the board members will begin to listen carefully to the needs of the people, I'm ending, who elected you to serve, rather than taking political expediency that leads more parents and teachers to leave our schools. I moved here because Cabarrus schools were supposed to be different from New York schools. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. We'll move to our next speaker, Tara Bingle. Is Miss Bingle here? Okay, we'll move to our next speaker, Lee Schumann. Welcome, Mr. Schuman.
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members, Dr. Kapiki. You guys have seen me up here enough. I don't need to tell you who I am. I'm here tonight. This is the first board meeting since we had the issue that occurred at Beverly Hills. No matter how you feel about migratory birds as it came to be, or whether you think that was some type of a ploy by people to continue to try to save an elementary school, the fact of the matter is we had people come up in front of this Board of Education and flat out lie. And then we had a full-on media campaign by just about every media source I contacted and said that never happens. Never has the school system contact all the media sources to get their story out. What's most frustrating about all of this is for 7 years I've been involved in this situation. I didn't start out to head an organization. The SOS Association just came to be. It's organic by citizens who cared about their school system. And the only thing that's happened in that 7 years is we've just been vilified. Looked at like we don't know what we're talking about, even though we're the only ones that have held anybody accountable for 7 years. That's the Board of Education's job. For those of you on the board that aren't going to be here the next election cycle, I hope that the new board starts to take that seriously. Transparency, honesty, that's fixed with accountability. If you hold people accountable, then they're honest and they're transparent. This whole situation that occurred where we had someone come up here and basically tell you guys something that didn't occur, nobody's addressed it in public comments because there hasn't been a meeting since then. Board of Education hasn't addressed it. It's like it never happened. When's somebody going to be held accountable? Your job as a Board of Education isn't to simply protect the staff. The staff are good people. They're out here doing their jobs. I get it. They have a hard job. I have a boss. Being held accountable isn't browbeating somebody. It's simply asking them to explain. I was told several times I would get a meeting with somebody, either Dr. Kapiki or Mr. Bowers, Dr. Bowers, with the information I provided. Never happened. The only time I ever got a meeting was when Dr. Kapiki mentioned that the school was unsafe. And I emailed him and said, I want to know why it's unsafe. I have a child there. And he walked me through the school, showed me all the things that haven't been fixed over the years by the county commissioners, either not funding it or the board not asking for it, or people just choosing not to do it. And now we're in a situation we're going to build a new $50 million school. We could have fixed that school years ago. Told it couldn't be renovated. Yet part of the $18 million we're saving, there's a $4 million line item for a renovation. How do we have a line item for renovation for a school that can't be renovated? Anybody ask that question? We have a deferred maintenance budget that's just completely irrational. Has anybody tried to vet that with anybody else other than the staff, other than just asking them and trusting them what they tell you? This is about trust, and people in this county are losing trust in the school system. It has nothing to do with me, Beverly Hills, the SOS Association. You just heard other people talk about it. How do you fix that? How do you somehow get people to trust the school system? You hold people accountable. You value honesty and transparency above everything. Whether we like it or not, but whatever's transparent, I can sit up here and say I don't like it, but at least you're being transparent about it. When you're not transparent and you're not honest and you don't engage with people, what do you expect them to do? Not trust. Expect them to just blindly trust? No. I don't do that anymore. I did as a kid. It got me in a lot of trouble. Your job is to trust but verify. That doesn't mean browbeating the staff. That means asking questions like Keisha and Rob and Laura have done. Not giving them the questions before the meeting. And then apologizing if you bring a question up that maybe they haven't heard before. I hope the new board starts holding people accountable. puts honesty and transparency above all else. If we do that, we can fix the school system. If we don't, we won't. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members will move to 11.01. This is our action agenda. This is the alternate accountability model with Mr. Carl Sane. Welcome, Mr. Sane.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Kopicki, members of the board and the community. This presentation outlines a recommendation for approval for Opportunity High School and the Performance Learning Center to operate on the alternative accountability model for the 24-25 school year. As you are likely aware, school performance grades for public schools are based on a formula comprised of 80% achievement and 20% growth that is primarily based on EOG or EOC assessments, progress of multilingual learners, graduation rates, career readiness indicators for high schools. However, alternative schools largely function with a different mission, and DPI provides some flexibility for these schools to instead focus on metrics that better align with their mission of providing an alternative approach to graduation. This slide outlines the two options that DPI provides to alternative schools. Option A is the same model that all of the rest of our schools operate under, which is 80% achievement and 20% growth. Option B is comprised of three components: student persistence, which is the percent of students who remain enrolled in a public school through the end of the year; 20% achievement. That achievement model is the exact same achievement model as the others, as all schools operate under, which would again be EOG proficiency, EOC proficiency, L progress, graduation rate, math course rigor, and work keys or ACT results. And then 60% growth, which is again the same EVOS calculation as the other schools. You can notice the one change is the difference. Growth is a higher calculation, achievement is a lower calculation, and now they are getting credit for student persistence. Relative to the traditional accountability model, B decreases that emphasis on standardized assessment indicators in favor of an emphasis on student persistence and growth. This is the same accountability model that PLC and Opportunity have been on for several years. Both principals have requested this model to better suit their students' needs and better direct the efforts of their staff. This does require Board of Education and Superintendent approval to be submitted to the DPI. So I am requesting that approval.
Board members, any questions about this?
I do.
Ms. Lindsay?
So with this model, is this the first time that we're doing this model for these schools?
This is at least the third straight year.
Okay. Has this been proven to be successful?
So they are given, instead of an A, B, C, D, and F rating, they are given one of three different ratings, which they're not able to use the A, B, C, D, F, as that might be misleading. So when they go under option B, they are given options regarding their growth.
Okay. So I guess my question is, if we approve this model, I want us to know the success rate of it. If we're going to continue to approve this as the proposed model for these schools, I want to make sure it's a successful model, because it is changing the way that we typically would do for kids' grades. So what growth do you have any kind of data to show how much growth that they've had over the last 3 years since we've been doing this?
Their growth is not reported in the state spreadsheet. I do have access to their EVOS growth. I apologize, I do not have it this instant. I can grab it.
Okay. I would just feel uncomfortable voting on this, my thoughts, until we know and have some data showing that this is being successful and this is a good model for us to continue to follow. So that's my concern.
Ms. Escobar?
Thank you. I think we've discussed in the past the benefits of measuring growth and how the state doesn't allow us to do that. So we're trying to have this opportunity to do it in places where we have that flexibility. I guess the question that I have is, do you know the number of students that are affected by this, or who would be under this model?
So the model is the way that the state is scoring those two schools. So it's not necessarily, essentially the students that are in school when they take those exams contribute towards these models. So their test score either counts towards Opportunity or PLC or if they exit Opportunity, then their score would go back to their home school. But all students in that school would count towards this model. And again, this model is not grading the students per se. It is a model that assesses the school's performance grade.
Okay. All right. And then the number of students, though, in both of those schools, is that around 200, or do we know?
Opportunity fluctuates throughout the year. Obviously, PLC also fluctuates throughout the year. So PLC does not have many freshmen at all. You can imagine over the course of the year, they gain more students throughout the year. Opportunity fluctuates pretty heavily. This past year, Opportunity fluctuated even more because we were able to modify the length of student assignment at Opportunity.
I would say at any given time, you might have somewhere from, and Mr. LeGrand could probably verify these numbers for me. I don't have the data in front of me, but your PLC, you don't want to exceed 100 students. And I don't think we hit that high a benchmark. And our Opportunity School is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to 100 students during the course of the year, with a lot of back and forth, kids coming in and going out. Mr. LeGrand developed a really good model this past year where instead of putting the students there for the entire year, there's a review period every 45 days. So some kids would come in and go back to their home school. So there was some more effective transition of kids coming in and out of the Opportunity School. Am I, Mr. LeGrand, fairly close on those numbers?
Yes.
Thank you.
And so then to clarify what you said at the beginning, which which is that ultimately this is the grade that the school that we report to the state for the school because of the fluctuation. That's why. So the reality is if I'm a student that's there for 45 days or 3 months, when I go back, you're keeping, my grades are going to be the same.
That's right.
It's just how they get reported to the state will be different.
That's right. This
Okay.
is strictly the school performance grade model that is being used to assess. Again, whichever students are taking the assessment at that school will count towards Opportunity or PLC, but this does not impact student grades per se. It is strictly and maybe I'm misunderstanding the question, but this is this is the school performance grade given to the school.
That's what I was trying to understand. And so then for us, for our these two school models, it shows all the work that we're putting into that growth in a way that we wouldn't be able to capture.
That's right. Especially as we move, and I'm going to do some napkin math, but Opportunity School now has windows of down as few as 45 days for students. And so on option A you can see is 80% achievement. So that is whether the students actually pass those exams or not. If I'm a teacher at Opportunity and I may only have those students for the last 10 days of the semester, or maybe the last even 45 days of the semester, whether they pass that exam or not is not largely indicative of the instruction that I've had in that time, and it may not necessarily reflect the teaching that's happening in that classroom. So the benefit of using option B, which is designed specifically for alternative schools, is to limit the impact on that achievement, whether they pass the test or not, and to magnify the amount of those students that actually completed the year enrolled in a school. So obviously these students are typically at-risk students that may be prone to dropouts or higher risk of dropping outs. So we want to maximize that part of the score. So the incentive is to keep these students in school. There's still some achievement component of whether they pass the test or not, but we're increasing the component on growth of how much did the students improve from last year to this year relative to their course mates across the state.
Ms. Sandage.
So, and this may be a repeat for you, so I apologize if it is, but I just want us to bring clarity. So, in option A, this is what traditional schools follow, correct?
That's correct.
So, we are here because we are considering this for non-traditional schools.
That's correct.
All right, so that's the reason why we're here. Okay, I just want to clarify that. And then can you break down for me, and this is where I'm talking about repeat, what the 80% goes to? So for example, is EOG proficiency 20? Is EL progress 20? Is there a breakdown in there somewhere?
It's actually the denominator of students that completed each of those components. So for instance, if you have one student, I'm going to do a middle school example. What we're talking about for Opportunity is their 612 score, and for PLC is just 912. Middle school is a little bit easier to understand just because it's just EOGs and multilinguals. But if you have 200 students that take the 6th grade math test, and 100 students for some reason that took the 7th grade math test. We don't have any schools that have half as many students, but that means it's based on how many students took that assessment. So the denominator out of all 300 in that instance, that 6th grade school would count twice as much because there was twice as many students. So when it says EL progress, that is entirely dependent on how many students took that access assessment. We have some schools with a large number of students that take that access assessment, and in that case it counts a larger percentage. In other schools where it's a small number, it's based proportional. So
Okay.
how many students attempted each of those metrics?
Okay. And sorry, thank you for the presentation. And then, so do I understand correctly that there are currently 2 schools and we're moving to 4 schools that are asking to do this? No, I understood
No,
that.
ma'am. In the past, last year we asked for, and again, both principals have specifically requested this
Again.
in meetings with me. Again, Opportunity School was on this model last year, and they were requesting it again. The Performance Learning Center was on it last year, and they were requesting it again.
And that's where the 3 years came from. They've
We
been
have
doing
used
it for
this at
3.
least the last 3 years.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying, and thanks for the presentation.
Sure. Thank you.
Mr. Floyd?
Thank you. I just want to point out for everybody that, I mean, all of us, pretty much anyone in education, anybody in school board, I mean, all of us that pay attention to this stuff have made this argument against the 80-20 model for a long time. And when we're looking at applying this 2020-60 here, the goal of the Opportunity School and the PLC is, by definition, growth in these students. So it would make a lot of sense to do this, and I think it is a much better accountability model overall. But I also want to just kind of put it into context for folks that that's the goal of these schools, is to measure that and to build that. And I think this is a great model, and this goes right into everything that we all talk about all the time.
Mr. Walter?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I think, I mean, these are 2 completely different schools. I mean, you have a PLC and then you have an Opportunity School, which, like we were just talking, they're just there for a short period of time. They're not even there for a year, most of them. So if you went to the traditional, you get a letter grade, which wouldn't be very positive. So I understand why not do that. But there is an option C. Why would we not look at an option C to better gauge how we're doing, or how the school is? I mean, if we're talking accountability, how is the school doing? Something that's actually makes sense for students that are there for a short period of time. I mean, you've got a 4-year graduation rate, you got a math course rigor, you got other things that are all supposed to be included into your achievement. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me at all. I think you should look at an option C at some point to better gauge how those schools are doing. And even so, if we're doing this option B, how do people get the data? How do they see where we are? I mean, because right now, like you said, if you go to the spreadsheet, there's nothing there. They can't see how those schools are doing.
Sure. So to clarify, option A, the achievement and the growth in option A are calculated the exact same way with the same metrics as in option B. So they both include EOG, EOC proficiency. They both include progress, graduation rate, math course rigor, work keys, and ACT results. It's just the difference in the percent that it counts. So in option A, it counts as 80%. In option B, it counts as 20%. Option C is actually create your own formula and propose that to the state. So I am not proposing an option C in this presentation as a recommendation. Option C is you create your own rules and apply that, and if the state approves it, then you can move forward with an option
Well,
C.
if it better fits the school, I think you ought to look at it. But I understand tonight we're going to ask for a B.
Sure.
Any other questions, board members?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Sandage?
Just a statement. So you pretty much saying it ain't broke, it's working.
So I would make the argument that our alternative schools, so between Opportunity and PLC, examine data. I've worked in 3 different school districts. They examine more data around student well-being and around student outcomes than other alternative schools. They went through the exact same school improvement process that all of our traditional schools looked at. They looked at the same data points regarding academic outcomes, around student wellness outcomes, around attendance outcomes that all of the rest of the schools looked at during School Leadership Academy last month. So they're looking at the exact same data points. They're still working towards the same academic metrics. They're still asked to do the exact same school improvement plan process that all of the rest of the schools are asked to do. And they're also still asked to follow the same expectation as far as what what district initiatives they're aligned with. So all of that process looks the exact same. We're just allowing them to operate under some flexibility just because of the slight difference in mission and vision that those schools would have.
And that's working.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I need a motion to approve the alternate accountability model.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Floyd, a second by Ms. Escobar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, that is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Board will move to 11.02, our Title I overview and budget plan for 24-25 school year with Dr. Mary Beth Roth. Welcome, Dr. Roth.
Good evening. I would like to ask Amy Cummings, our Title I coordinator, to come to the podium to join me for this presentation this evening. So good evening, Madam Chair, school board members, and Dr. Kopicki. We're here this evening to present the Cabarrus County Schools Title I plan for the 24-25 school year. We're going to get started with some Title I celebrations and just update you on some of the things that have happened this past school year.
Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight and to present to you. And so like Dr. Roth said, we will start with some celebrations from Title I. So first of all, 33 Title I administrators and classroom leaders were trained by Relay, which is a graduate school of professional education and provides professional development opportunities, on 2 workshops, observation and feedback and data meetings and coaching strategies. And these are not set and get, these are hands-on, where the participants actually get practice using those strategies. In addition, we had a very successful North Carolina Department of Public Instruction Office of Federal Programs Consolidated Monitoring visit. So every 4 years, every district in the state has to go through a very rigorous process, and we did a great job of showing how we're using our Title I funds and showing that we're doing what we're supposed to be in terms of getting community and stakeholder feedback.
This past spring, we were able to provide thinking maps, train the trainer, staff development for 27 school leaders and teachers. And this is in preparation to train our staffs at our Title I schools in thinking maps. Thinking maps is a research-based strategy that allows students to use these maps that you see in the picture here to gain access to understanding content across the curriculum. So we use those in all subjects across the core areas, as well as in music, PE. They can be used in any subject area.
In addition, we partnered again with NC State Plants for Human Health to work with teachers on how to incorporate social emotional learning into their instruction in the already existing curriculum through plants and gardening. And so we'll move on from there to a Title I overview. Just a reminder that the purpose of Title I is to increase student achievement with special attention to students and families most vulnerable to not meet potentially standards of proficiency.
All right, so our federal Title I funding comes from the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is passed by our federal government. This serves more than 26 million children nationwide. Approximately 79% of these students are served in grades K through 8. Districts may serve students with 40% or more economically disadvantaged students as determined by free and reduced lunch applications or identified through CEP. However, districts must serve schools with 75% or more economically disadvantaged students or provide equivalent support. All right, so the process for identifying schools each spring, Ms. Cummings and myself, we work with our school principals. We invite our Title I and our non-Title I schools to review our free and reduced lunch data, our CEP data, and we determine what that threshold is for determining which schools will be Title I. So this year we have determined that elementary schools above 55% free and reduced lunch will be served, and middle schools above 65% free and reduced lunch will be served. Just to give you some historical data of how our numbers have changed and how Cabarrus County is changing over the last 3 years. In 22-23, we determined our threshold to be 45%, and we had 4,480 students that we served with Title I funds. In 23-24, we moved the threshold to 50% because we have more students. 5,888 students were determined with free and reduced lunch, or CEP, to be served. And this year that has even grown further for our upcoming school year, 24-25, with including that 55% threshold, we're up to 6,586 students served. So we are increasing our number of students who we are serving as, of course, our population has grown. And these will be the Title I schools that will be served. The only change that we have is with the closing of Beverly Hills, we have determined that R. Brown McAllister will be a school that will, due to redistricting, will be served next year.
So Title I has certain requirements for how we use the funds that we receive. We can supplement, not supplant, local and state funds. We have to support all identified schools, and again, as Dr. Roth said, at 75%, we are required to support a school. All teachers and paraprofessionals in these schools must meet state certification and licensure requirements. They must serve schools, as I said, at 75% or above, or provide comparable services, and that's an important piece to it. And serve and fund schools in rank order of poverty. And so the budget process goes like this. We start out with an initial planning allotment based on 95% of what the schools receive during the current school year, because we hope for an increase every year, but that doesn't always happen, and this year we did have a slight decrease, so we plan with a little bit of a decrease. Then we have to look at federally required or state required set-asides, and we'll get into what those look like in some next slides. These set-asides support school-level programs and federal compliance requirements, and then the rest is left to school allocations according to rank order of poverty formula. So this year we can see that our budget is a little over 4.6, almost 4.7 million, but it is a slight decrease of 54,667 from the previous school year. In terms of looking at the whole budget, 84% goes out to the schools and 16% is held in district set-asides. And that's actually misleading because more than 16% goes back to the schools. 1% of the entire budget is held for parent and family engagement, which goes right back out to the schools. So that's actually included in that 16%. So it's actually, more than that goes out. We're supposed to, of that 1%, we are supposed to send at least 90% of it back out to the schools for parent-family engagement, and we send all of it back out to the schools for parent and family engagement. So if we look more closely at those school set-asides, what is in that 16%? So first of all, school support, and I'll talk about that in just a second, but then administrative cost, and so that is basically paying for the folks that work in the federal programs division, as well as indirect costs. So the state gives us a certain percentage of indirect costs that we have to hold onto for finance, so we don't have really an option there. So what does the school administrative piece look like? So again, there's that 1% for parent and family engagement, funds for foster care, homeless youth, neglected and delinquent youth, professional development, pre-K support, instructional support, and then private school participation. I have an asterisk there because we do an equitable services process every year, and we did not have any private schools this year choose to stake a claim of our Title I funding, so they chose not to do that. So just to give you more specifics of what that looks like, this is our budget so that you can see the specific dollar amounts for all of those set-asides. That left us with a little over 3.9 million to send out to the schools, and we allocated those funds at $599 per pupil allotment, and so then we add back that parent-family engagement. So that blue column there that says PFE total, that's parent and family engagement. So that's from
the green column set aside for parent-family engagement going right back into the school's budget.
And just for your information, the neglected and delinquent youth is in our county. We do not have a delinquent youth facility, but we do have a neglected youth facility as an orphanage. So that funding goes there for tutors and additional supports for those students. We have McKinney-Vento. Those funds go to support our McKinney-Vento program, our McKinney-Vento coordinator, support students who are in shelters with tutoring. So that money is matched with another grant. So we get another $90,000 plus that $90,000 to support our McKinney-Vento students. And of course, we set aside some other fundings for foster care. Professional development, such as the thinking maps that we did this past year, came from our set aside, or if anyone in our department needs to go for any additional conferences or training, that's what that money is used for. And of course, the early childhood is to support our preschool expansion with our strategic plan, and that is to provide some additional salary funds for our pre-K department. All right, so the school level Title I planning process, we have already begun this process. It began at the Summer Leadership Academy with our school improvement teams. This is where they started their comprehensive needs assessment to identify their school improvement goals. So they have already began working on their school improvement goals and will begin working on their action steps this month in July. And of course, they'll take the plans that will come to you later in September. However, what Ms. Cummings does is she will take the information from all of the schools and create that for the Title I plan that has to be submitted to the state. And of course, they have to align their school improvement plan goals with their purchases for Title I. It has to match exactly. They cannot spend it on some random item. Everything has to be supported through their school improvement plan goals. And then, of course, we monitor that throughout the school year. All right, so what can schools spend their money on? Well, most of our schools will take 88% of their money and they'll use it for additional teachers. They might utilize it for an MTSS coach, tutors. I have approved many tutor STAs or contracts for next year this summer, and that has been very effective in improving our student achievement. And then, of course, that includes any stipends, additional teacher assistance, and of course the benefits that are required to go along with that.
Additionally, that 1% for parent and family engagement. So the schools are required to have events that happen in their schools where the parents come in, learn about the Title I program, what it's all about, and how they can support their children at home. And so they have to use funding to support those events and those, and there are still very specific requirements about how they can use those funds in those situations.
Schools can also choose to purchase additional instructional materials if they deem necessary, or they can buy additional technology, smart boards, iPads, any of that, as long as it aligns to their school improvement goals.
In addition, research-based instructional materials provide students with high-quality learning experiences, and that goes back to, like we were talking about, thinking maps and those strategies as well.
Additionally, the tutors are going to need some tools and materials, so they can also buy intervention materials with that, or enrichment if students need additional enrichment opportunities.
As well as teachers provide personalized learning experiences, so we have to equip teachers with the skills and materials to be able to accomplish those goals.
All right, so that is the end of our presentation. And what questions might you have?
Board members, do you have questions? Ms. Escobar?
Thank you. My first question was, where do they spend it on? And then you answered it. So thank you for the slides and the presentation. The question I had was related to the events that parents, they must have, explaining what Title I is. Is there a participation requirement? Do they have to demonstrate how many kids, parents actually showed up to come to that.
Yes, absolutely. We collect data on many aspects of the program throughout the year. Data collection on that and monitoring that is a large part of what I do with the principals and the school leaders and guiding them. And yes, they do have to document some kind of signed written record of every parent that comes to one of those events. It doesn't have to be handwritten sign-in sheets anymore. We can do a lot with technology, with QR codes and Google Forms to make that easier to gather the data. But that monitoring visit that I mentioned earlier, so every school that was part of that monitoring visit had to provide the evidence of the events that they had had and who had attended.
And the slide that you showed, it looked like there was some sort of luau or something. I mean, so it looks like our schools are pretty creative in getting the parent.
Right.
They're not coming for the Title I presentation. They're coming to see their kid do something.
They do. I mean, and we have to think about, what are the ways that we're going to get parents into the door? So having things where their kids are participating. So that was actually a picture of Rocky River Elementary's Noche Latina.
Ms. Handage.
I'll play devil's advocate here for a second. So, what if we did not have Title I funding? What are some things that we would see across our district, in your opinion?
We would have fewer adults that are providing services and supports to children. That's probably one of the biggest impacts. As we showed, 88% of the funds that go to the schools support that. So you would take away, students would not have tutors. Students might have fewer counselors. Students might have fewer behavior specialists and lead teachers. So those would be taking teachers out of the classrooms away from children.
Thank you for answering that. I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
I was going to say also it may be increased class size, because sometimes schools will choose, especially in 4th and 5th grade, to use Title I funds to reduce the class size in those two grades.
I should have said this in the beginning. Thank you for the presentation and the time that you've taken to put this together for us. The other question I have was in relation to the percentages. I heard 75% you have to provide Title I funding. So can you tell me what that means in layman's terms? So if we had a school that met that 75% threshold, we have no choice but to receive the Title I funding and provide that to them, or we have to provide that to them? What can you help me understand?
We can typically do either one. We can decide that we are going to provide them the supports that they would get if in the terms of what we're giving the other schools, or we would just have to include them in our Title I.
Okay, and that still doesn't make sense to me. But so we've got schools that are 45 one year, 50 one year, and then 55% the next year. So we don't have any 75% schools in our district.
Right. I would say that we do have some schools that are 75%,
Okay.
but at this point they are CEP schools. For example, Concord Middle is a CEP school. They were above 75% at one point and then went to CEP. There's a couple that fall in that range. If you see the 100% on the budget list, those are schools that are CEP and getting free and reduced lunch for all children.
Oh, okay, I got you. Thank you for explaining that to me.
Mr. Walter.
Yeah, so along those lines, we're choosing to add these extra schools. We don't have to. The only ones we have to is if they're above the 75%.
Yes.
But we think we can spread it further and make a bigger impact by adding more schools. Is that kind of what we have been doing? I mean,
Yes.
Traditionally we have been doing that.
Yes, we have continued with the same schools. We have never had a school that we said you're Title I this year and you're not Title I this year. But what we've seen in the trend is that these schools that were 45% 2 years ago are now 55%.
So what happened with our Brown? Because it was a Title I school at one point, back a couple of years ago. I mean, so
That
that's
was, yeah, that was before
redistricting. Okay.
redistricting, yeah.
Okay. So the impact to schools, are all the schools going to see an increase in funding, or not? I mean,
As opposed to last year,
yes.
In terms of Title I funding?
it's
So
going to
they
be very,
getting,
it's
I
gonna
mean,
be
can they plan for
comparable.
more? They have to. Does anybody have to cut services because of this plan?
Depending on their enrollment, if their enrollment has fluctuated, they may see a decrease.
So again, back to the redistricting, like Concord Middle, we've
Right.
cut
Concord Middle,
students,
yes.
so they're
You
not.
can see
They're
that
not going to have
Concord
the
Middle
same.
does not have as many students as they had 2 years ago, so they have seen decrease, but they're not serving as many students.
Okay, I see how I guess I understand that part. Um, so the goal here is how are we measuring? What are we looking to say that, hey, we've achieved something? I know we talked about some of the things that we were celebrating, but what is the ultimate goal? Is it the test scores? Is it what we talked about before, the accountability score? Is it growth? What are we targeting these funds towards? I mean, so we can say, hey, look, we're successful, or this school is doing something that's making a difference. Maybe we can replicate that somewhere else. Does that make sense?
It does. I think everything you said is what we're trying to chase and what we're after to achieve. And I think Mr. Cummings and Dr. Roth had kind of articulated pretty well when they talked about some of the resources that we provide with the Title I funding. So to your point, it gives, if we weren't doing this, we wouldn't have the teachers in the classrooms, and we wouldn't have the tutors in the classrooms, the behavior management specialists, the instructional aides.
But we're all doing that for a purpose, and that's to help kids, obviously.
And the purpose is to increase achievement, provide the appropriate supports, whether it be academic, social, emotional, or otherwise, for the students. So that's how we measure it. If you didn't have it, I can assure you that your problems would be many more than what you have right now in terms of some of those different areas.
We can't, but I mean, in the past, we'd celebrated that all those Title I schools met or exceeded growth. So, but that wasn't mentioned this time. So, is that still one of our goals? Is that still?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And then are we? I mean, I guess through the school improvement plan now, and that's how important the school improvement plan is really targets how are you going to use those funds and to get to that point. That's about all I've got for right now. Thank you.
Mr. Floyd?
Thank you for the information. Thanks for sending the additional slide this afternoon. That was helpful. I want to ask about, just to elaborate for my first question, can you elaborate on, if you go to slide 16, 90,000 homeless youth, McKinney-Vento, that's personal to me and probably a lot of folks. Can you talk about what we do with that money that goes towards that, just so people have an idea? I mean, we talked about that. We talked about getting a matching grant. But what are we doing with that money for those McKinney-Vento homeless children?
So for the McKinney-Vento, we provide a variety of services, but one of the things that we use it for is we have an emergency funding, that if a family moves in and they do not have any school supplies or whatever they might need, we can use that funding to support those families. We can also, we have at the shelters provided additional supports for students in terms of tutoring. So as a student comes in, they may have, obviously they'll need social emotional support, but giving them that extra tutor and that extra support after school at their shelter has been very helpful. We also have to coordinate all the travel for them, because if McKinney-Vento ensures that they have a way to get to school. So we have to ensure that our coordinator is working with the transportation to get them a way to get to school, a van, or wherever that might be. So those funds are used to support that as well.
I just wanted to point out that's a lifeline to the people who need us the most, and that if we ever were to find ourselves in that situation, we would be very thankful for those services we provide there. Next question, I think on slide 10 here. My slides got out of whack when you added one. Sorry. Yeah, okay. So 45 fiscal year 23, 45%, 24, 50%, 25, 55% threshold. So we're growing very obviously. If I go down to slide 14, the total budget was reduced. It seems like two numbers that shouldn't be moving in opposite directions.
Mm-hmm. And
right.
I think that's coming from the federal government,
right.
has decided to.
But I just want to make sure we point that out, that this is a problem that's getting worse and we're getting less to help it. So
We're doing
I
more
want to make sure
with
we point that out.
less.
Correct, yes. And thankful to the people out there who are making do with less. We ask them to do more with less all the time. So, and I had one more here. Actually, you know what? I think he answered it. So, thank you again for that presentation. It was very helpful, and the additional information sent this afternoon was great leading up to this.
Ms. Sandage?
I did have a question about the reduction. Do we know why it was reduced, and does this occur every year? Do we see a reduction every year? Do we see an increase? What's been the status?
So since I've been in the role, we saw a significant increase from 22 to 23. And then 23 to 24, we saw maybe a $200,000 increase. And this is the first year I've ever seen a decrease.
Is there anyone that has previous knowledge or historical knowledge on when we or how we've seen decreases in this funding? Because I'm with Board Member Floyd down here about the reduction in the funding. Do we have any understanding for the reduction?
I have only that I have read that it has come from the recommendations at the federal level, Senate and the House, that there has been some determinations that this funding would be reduced. And I think we didn't lose as much as we could have because we had an increase.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that to the best of your ability.
Mr. Treadaway.
I just wanted to point out, we've talked about class size and all that. There's class size on paper, how many students a teacher has, but where Title I really benefits the teacher and the student is that if you have 22 second graders in a classroom, but if an assistant takes 6 or 7 of those out, it benefits all of the students in that room because you got smaller groups, and it means you can target the instruction so much better. So these especially those assistants are just, I mean, invaluable for especially working with our students that, at those early years we're trying to catch them up.
Miss Lindsay.
Wanted to kind of circle back to one of the questions that Pam had asked about the parent involvement. So I would assume that in a Title I school with kids that are homeless, kids that are in foster homes, parental involvement might be difficult. We don't know. I mean, are the events that are held that parents are expected to go to, are they done at a time when parents potentially might be at work? I also think about the transportation issues. I mean, if the kids have transportation issues, obviously the parents are going to have transportation issues as well. So has that, I guess my question is there anything that we do to accommodate for those parents, because they would need to be able to get there? And is that, have we seen an issue with that in the past?
Sure. So no, that's a great question. So there have been some schools that have actually used their parent and family engagement funds to pay buses and bus drivers to actually go out to the neighborhoods to offer transportation to the events. DPI encourages the schools to have a variety of times during the day when you have the events, because some parents may be able to only come to something in the morning, some parents can only come to something in the evening, and so schools are encouraged to have events at a variety of times of the day to accommodate different schedules, not just one set time. Since some parents work, evening work, they may be able to come to something morning or midday.
So with the Title I, these requirements that the parents, this is only for Title I schools that the parents are, I just think, man, we need parents involved in all of the schools. And so we're, for the Title I schools, and I get it that some of these kids are in a different way than some of our other children and might need extra help. I totally understand that. But I also know that in some schools that aren't Title I schools, that it would be beneficial. Not every parent has a car in those circumstances either. So it's just, I'm grateful that we have this for these children. But then it's like we need to also be trying to increase parental involvement in all of the schools, because I think we would all have better outcomes if that was the case. But that's just my thoughts. But thank you. I do appreciate the presentation.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for your presentation. Board members, we need to approve this. So I need a motion to approve the Title I budget as presented.
So moved.
Second. So I have a motion by Mr. Floyd, a second by Ms. Escobar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is approved. Thank you so much. Board members, will move to 11.03, our final 2023-24 budget amendments with Mr. Phil Penn. Good evening, Mr. Penn.
Good evening, everyone. So, Ms. Sandage, 2 weeks ago, you asked a question. What happens if something changes? And I said, well, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And here's the bridge. So literally, as we were sitting here that night, the state DPI dropped a additional funding of $261,810 to us for new bus leases for new buses that are coming up this summer. That change requires us to go back and re-amend our budget for 23-24 one last time to increase the state piece of the budget by that amount to a total for the state of that's going to require us to increase our capital budget, because that's where the capital flows through, by $261,810, which then increases the overall budget, as you'll see in the sheet, talks to now $519.4 million for the full year. And since we are now past June 30th, we cannot have any more amendments. So I know this is the last one. But yeah, unfortunate that the state did come out with that change literally as we were sitting here that night, which triggered this need to have this change. And I think you probably have seen in the board meeting schedule for 24-25, this is the last meeting is on June 30th. So we've changed the timing of that to address some of these concerns.
Okay, board members, are there any questions about this final amendment? Mr. Walter?
How many buses does that get us?
7 in the back of my mind.
About 7 for...
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, board members, we need a motion to approve the 2000.
On the amendment, it said board meeting on 7th of July. Correct that date.
It's lease payments. So it's,
Where is that?
first attachment here.
Oh, on the attachment.
I was trying to show it to you. It probably doesn't matter. I just want to make sure.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Oh, sorry, it says 7th of board meeting 7th day of July 2024.
Oh, it should be the 8th.
It'd be 8.
Yeah. The one that yeah, it's the one that has the signature on it. That'll be the one that matters, so we can always correct that. Thank you.
All right, sorry about that.
All good.
Okay, board members, do we have a motion to approve the budget amendment?
So moved. Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Treadaway, a second by Mr. Walter. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That amendment is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, board members, we'll move to 11.04, approval of our school nutrition annual contracts with Dr. Jonathan Bowers and Ms. Stephanie Allman. Welcome, Ms. Allman.
Thank you. I think this one's on, isn't it? Good evening. I appreciate your time. So I am here to present our bid renewals for the upcoming school year. As you know, we contract with vendors on an annual basis for goods and services that are purchased throughout the year. And this year we have 3 bids for which we are asking you to approve our renewal. Okay, let me see. I gotta do double duty. So why do we renew? Well, when we have a good contract relationship, we obviously want to continue with that vendor for the obvious benefits of keeping good service as well as the products that are well suited to meet the needs of our children. Obviously, cost savings is a prime reason for continuing that contract relationship, and we evaluate that decision to renew or rebid every year considering all of these elements. So what's actually being renewed is the relationship with the vendor, the agreement to purchase from that same vendor, but only if the vendor agrees. It's not a requirement. And it will only work if they can agree to hold to those original terms and conditions. If they can't, then we have to issue a new bid, as you've seen in the past. And there are some, even though those terms and conditions remain the same, there are some material changes allowed even when we're renewing bids. Those changes depend on the contract type and the structure of the initial bid, however it was initially bid. So we have several types of contracts, but 3 of which are shown on the table here. Cost plus fixed fee. That means that the vendor charges us the same amount that they paid their supplier for the product. If they bought it for $2, they can only charge us $2, but they charge us something like a case fee or a handling fee. So it's the cost of the product plus that fixed fee. The fixed fee is what cannot change in the renewal period, but the price changes are allowed because their cost goes up, obviously, or hopefully goes down, but most of the time it's up here lately anyway. A unit cost type contract indicates that all the price we pay includes the product or service, handling, and delivery. So it is a single amount for that unit cost. There are no extra charges allowed. There can't be any handling fees or anything like that. And the unit is whatever you buy, a bunch, a case, a loaf, whatever it is. With that explained, here are the contracts that we're requesting renewal for. So as you see, there are 3. The first is groceries and supplies. Our vendor is Gordon Food Service. That's a cost plus fixed fee contract with the bottom line projected to be $4,824,501.65. We are in the 3rd of 4 allowable renewal years. Once we hit year 4, we have to rebid after that. Produce, fresh produce. This is currently contracted with R&H Produce, also a cost plus fixed fee. It is projected to be $471,340.90. We're in year 2 of 4. And finally up this year is milk, with the vendor being Paul Campbell Distributors. A unit cost is what we pay for that, and we are projected to have a bottom line of $1.3 million, again, year 2 of 4. So bottom line totals, even when the price holds, the individual price, the bottom line totals can change in renewal years. Can be market conditions, if it costs them more to run trucks, things like that. Availability, if you fell in love with one product and they replace it, that company's not making it anymore. Purchase quantity differences is the package that used to cost X number of dollars had 32 ounces and now it only has 24 ounces. Very common nowadays. And lastly, when you change the number of schools or the amount of the product that you're buying, just makes sense. And again, how often can we renew? Most of these are written with a 4-year annual renewal allowed. And after that 4th year, again, those are voluntary. We don't have to renew. The vendor does not have to agree to renew. But after that 4th year, you have to go out for bid again because we want to increase competition and as much free trade as we possibly can. So funding, how are we going to pay for this? S&P expenses, as you know, are funded by federal reimbursements, per meal reimbursements, state reimbursements, which is a new thing really since COVID that we're hoping will continue, at least for lunch. They've been doing it for breakfast for a while. They started it after COVID, and we're crossing our fingers that it will stay. Cash sales, and then various non-recurring grants and funds, also various recurring grants, because we have things like equipment assistance grants that come every year. They're just not guaranteed. And good news, for 24-25, we do not plan to have a meal price increase, and we believe that the revenues that we expect from the above sources will cover the cost of all of our contracts. And that's that. It's pretty short and sweet.
Okay, board members, are there any questions? Ms. Escobar?
Thank you for that and for all the work that it takes to get to here. Why would we want to renew versus bidding out? Is there some sort of relationship that we know that this is the best price that's out there? I recognize that we like to continue to do business, but I just want to make sure that we're getting the best price, and we know that it is.
Definitely. And if you have a good relationship with the vendor, of course you want to continue that if at all possible, but the bottom line is the bottom line. You can't maintain a relationship just due to feelings or friendships or things like that. So that's where that 4-year limit helps kind of curb some of that if it were. For the most part, market conditions across the board, prices are going to be going up. So a lot of times you want to renew just because you know, even you may not have actual specifics, but you just know, knowing from the market that prices are going to be going up, just like we're in right now. I mean, everybody's in, not just organizations. So many times it's to continue a relationship with the vendor. More often than not, it's to keep that price as much as you possibly can.
Ms. Sandage.
Is there a reason for the 4-year as opposed to 2-year or 3-year or?
I think that is an industry standard. It's written into most procurement plans. The North Carolina Procurement Alliance, which I've mentioned to you all before in past years, our contract with that we not our contract with them, but the contract that we utilize when we bid through them specifies that 4 years. I'm sure there was a route for it years ago. It's been that way in 15 years in school nutrition that I've seen it. So I think it's mainly allowing for some stability without a complete overhaul every year. Because when you change vendors on something where you're buying 800 products, that's a pretty significant change, and so you want to carefully balance. Obviously, your bottom line is your bottom line. You've got to make sure that you are covering your expenses with your revenues, so you just can't extend it too far out. So it allows a little bit of time without it going on and on and on.
I totally get that, and I'm down there with board member Escobar and her question relating to, does that mean that we don't get the best price that we could get because we're not out there asking to see what the going rate is from other people who could potentially bid? Is that correct in my assumption, or what she was asking?
On paper, I suppose that could be happening, but I don't know of a school nutrition director that can afford to be in that boat. Most of us are very aware of the reimbursements that are going to eventually come down from COVID. You know, they've been inching down over time, and we want to keep the price stable for our students. That most of us, that would be just something we wouldn't really, it would not have a long-term advantage to us.
Understand. Thanks for the presentation and the time that you've taken. I also am glad that we will not have to increase costs for families this upcoming school year, so thank you for that information.
Mr. Walter.
So last year you had 5 renewals. This year you've got 3.
Yes.
What happened to the other 2?
Great question. So we are not continuing with a frozen yogurt novelties bid. We had the option to renew, but it was every so often you have to look and see what are things that are popular with students and so on, and so it was really just better off to move in a different direction with that. Chemicals, we are taking new bids, but we're still in the process for that, so it's not ready to come to you just yet.
Okay. And then explaining the projected bottom line, how's that determined?
So it depends on the structure of the bid. So for instance, our largest bid, which is groceries and supplies, the bottom line comes from, we take our menu and then we project how many students are probably going to be purchasing that meal or receiving that meal, and we come up with a potential usage and we multiply that by the unit cost, and then it tallies it up in a spreadsheet that gives us basically the bottom line for all of our the unit cost plus all of the fixed fee based on the number of cases we believe that they'll be handling for us.
So these costs aren't actually paid until you've actually bought the product, is that?
That's exactly right. It's basically that they're going to hold true. Now, groceries and supplies, they are allowed one price increase during the year, and then they'll do another price increase at the end. That's the way the bid is written, because they can't extend that for 5 years. They would never renew with you, but they do have to hold that fixed fee, that handling fee, for whatever number of years they agree to renew with you.
Right.
But it's just like you may buy more or less of a certain item, and so that it would fluctuate depending on how much you actually buy.
Okay,
with the weekly
you
grocery
may want to
bill.
look at some of that again, because I'm just comparing last year to this year, and for the groceries and supplies, it's a 15% increase. The produce is a 14% increase, and then milk is an 87% increase. That's almost double.
Now, part of that, remember, part of it is how much we're purchasing. So if more students are taking milk, then the price is going to go up, even if you are not necessarily selling more meals. But it could be that you're selling more meals. It could be, for instance, you may recall back in the, I want to say it was about October or so, there was a problem getting the strawberry milk packaging, and so they were substituting other milk for us, so you may have an unexpected higher price. And so that may not actually be what is, when we end up ordering and getting the bill and paying for it, that may not actually be reflective of
Right, but
what.
it still raises quite a bit of eyebrows.
It does.
87% is
It
several
certainly does.
deviations above a normal.
It absolutely does. And like I said, part of that is because of an increase in the number of meals, but it can also be if a vendor who you got 100 count case and now they're going to a 50 count case. Well, suddenly your fixed fee has doubled because now they're handling 2 cases for you. And it's really just exactly the same, but on a much larger scale than you see at the grocery store on a weekly basis.
But you have software that's helping you do that.
Pardon me?
You have software that's helping you calculate all that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and then and I see that you don't intend to raise the meal prices.
Yes.
When do we get to vote on that or approve that?
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I had, in the 5 years I've been here, I never put forth just a continuation. And I realized why. It's because last year was the only year that we had no change because of the 2 years of COVID and no meal prices whatsoever. So we had an increase in 1920, 10 cents, and then an increase in 22-23, which was about 5 cents, and well, 10 cents for one and 5 cents for another. Then we did an increase last year. So and we didn't do, as far as I recall, I don't think we did an approval for that, since we were just keeping the prices the same. But I'm glad you pointed that out, because I will be then bringing that to you. We won't change any prices. It'll be exactly the same as it was last year.
Looking forward to that vote. Thank you.
Yes, same.
Any other questions, board members? Okay. Board members, we need a motion to approve the school nutrition annual contracts.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion by Mr. Floyd, a second by Ms. Lindsay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That contract is approved. Thank you
very
so
much.
much for your presentation. We'll move to 11.05, Northwest Cabarrus High School Auditorium naming request. Good evening, Mr. LeGrand.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Kopicki. Tonight, I am bringing forth a request for the Northwest Cabarrus High School Auditorium to be named the A.A. Andrea Rassler Auditorium in honor of Miss Rassler, who recently retired after 30 years of service to Cabarrus County Schools. Ms. Rassler was nominated by fellow theater teacher Miss Annie Camp from West Cabarrus High School on behalf of all CCS theater teachers. Her former principal, Chris Myers, strongly endorses this request and is here tonight to speak about the impact that Ms. Rassler had on her students, their families, and fellow colleagues throughout her career. And I want to call Mr. Chris Myers up to speak about Ms. Rassler.
Welcome, Mr. Myers.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Kopicki, members of the board, and welcome Ms. Rassler, family, friends, supporters, legend that is in the back there. Thank you for the opportunity to wear some orange again tonight, Ms. Rassler. Keep that a secret. From March of 2016 until her retirement in June, I had the privilege and pleasure of working at Northwest Cabarrus High School with the legend that is Miss Andrea Rassler, or Rass, as the students call her. As the former principal of Trojan Nation, it has been an honor, and is an honor this evening, to stand in front of you and advocate why the Northwest Cabarrus High School Lecture Hall should be renamed in honor of Mrs. Rassler. I could filibuster for hours about the greatness that she exhibits, and all the things she has done, but I'm not going to do that. However, please humor me while I do provide some needed context. 34 total years of education, and 31 of those at Northwest Cabarrus High School. She is Mrs. Northwest. 2 times she was our Teacher of the Year. She directed over 110 productions, 5 times advanced to the North Carolina Theater Conference State Festival. 3 of those times were plays written by her herself. 3 times she was recognized as Outstanding Director at the Regional North Carolina Theater Conference. She won the Blumey Award Best Actress in 2015, the high school equivalent of the Oscars, and is an internationally produced and published playwright, and the list goes on. But what matters more than anything is the inspiration, compassion, and kindness she has shared with all of her students and colleagues. Mrs. Rassler was always and is always a team player, and she valued the importance of teaching the whole student and understood the importance of working with all of her colleagues to accomplish that goal. Without a doubt, the greatest impact was on her students. Her class was unique. It was very much like a family. Students were always put in leadership roles, leading exercises, and mentoring each other in various performances and activities. It was incredible to always see every student engaged, empowered, and genuinely happy to be in her class. This was reflected in her many plays and musicals, and I was blown away by the magnificent performances that were perfectly planned, directed, and executed. And on the rare occasion that I was having a bad moment at school, it was commonplace for me or other administrators to pop into the theater to see all the great things that were going on with Miss Rassler. I often spoke with her students during or after class and performance, and it was always the same conversations about how much this program has influenced their time at Northwest and how much Andy has made their time in high school meaningful. She gave countless students hope and purpose. Mrs. Rassler understood what it meant to be an educator, and she used her love and passion for the theatrical arts to reach students and help them realize their fullest potential. The number of lives that Mrs. Rassler has positively impacted in 31 years at Northwest Cabarrus High School is frankly staggering. A few examples directly from students to me this past school year. Quote, Mrs. Rassler really helped me come out of my shell. I moved here from Florida and did not know anyone, and it was hard, but Mrs. Rassler helped me find my voice at Northwest. Quote, Mrs. Rassler just gets us. She understands us. She is so nice, patient, and cool, end quote. And finally, quote, Mrs. Rassler is just so kind. She's kind to everyone and makes everyone feel good to be in her class. She is just a great teacher, end quote. And I could go on and on. Simply put, Mrs. Rassler is a remarkable educator, human being, thespian, advocate for the arts, Northwest Cabarrus High School. She is all that is great about teaching and Cabarrus County schools. Mrs. Rassler's gift of teaching is timeless and transcends generation. It doesn't matter if you were there in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Great teaching is great teaching, and that's what she did every day, all day long. And I could think of no better or more appropriate way to honor her legacy at Northwest than to rename the Northwest Cabarrus High School Lecture Hall in her honor. When we all look back and we have those teachers and we think about the ones we remember, that's Miss Rassler, and that's what so many kids and so many colleagues do. So thank you, Miss Rassler, and thank you for listening to me this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Floyd.
I want to first say, Annie, thank you for reaching out about this and taking the initiative to do it and to see it through, and just very, very cool to see. And Miss Rassler, you probably wouldn't even remember me. We've met, but you are a legend. That is very true, and I just want to thank you for everything that you've done. My question, I guess, Mr. LeGrand, Northwest is on the 10-year plan. When a new school's built, would the name of the theater transfer to the new building? Would it stay with the old building? Is that up to Miss Rassler? What are we going to do about that? I want to make sure we're properly honoring her going forward with whatever happens in the way that she wants.
Yeah, so the auditorium would follow her to the new school. We'd make sure we name that as well.
Mr. Treadaway.
I think we're all on the same page, because I wanted, I know there's going to be discussion, but I wanted the privilege of enthusiastically moving that we name the Northwest Cabarrus High School Auditorium after Ms. Rassler, and I was going to amend the motion that's on our agenda and make sure that we all know that it will move with the new high school, and add that to the motion.
Second.
She is, she's a good one. She's the best of the best.
Second.
Okay, Motion by Mr. Treadaway, a second by Mr. Walter. All those in favor say
I'd
aye.
like to say a comment too. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer here. I've been to numerous performances. It's just an amazing cast, amazing stuff that she's done over there, and make sure that we get an invitation to the unveiling.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I think we should give her a standing ovation.
Thank you.
What a great way to celebrate. Okay, board members, we'll move to 11.06, our soft choice annual contract for Microsoft Office 365 with Mr. Sane. Welcome back.
Good evening again. That's going to be difficult to follow. I'm hoping I can get a standing ovation. So good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Kopicki, members of the board and community. I'm here to request approval for the 2024-25 Microsoft contract as it exceeds $250,000. This contract covers the cost of all Microsoft products for all 40,000 users between our students and staff, such as Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, and Microsoft Outlook, which is obviously required for our email system. This contract additionally covers items that are downstream products of Microsoft that assist with functionality. For instance, this contract would additionally cover database support for products that are connected to our student information system, Active Directory support that controls all user email accounts and connections, web content filtering and support, SQL Server support that allows various functionality with SQL databases. In addition to providing products that help students access critical software through Microsoft 365, this contract is vital to supporting and maintaining some of the hidden back-end systems and structures that staff rely upon on a daily basis. I'm asking for your approval to move forward with this contract.
Any questions? Ms. Sandage? Mr. Walter?
So we've had an existing contract, and this, I guess it terminated this year, but it was extended for a year. What are we doing after that?
This is for each of the last 3 years, we have extended this for 1 year.
Okay, so that's the intent going forward. Are you going to try to do a multiple year agreement to lock in a price, or?
So my predecessor worked on this contract, and it looks like we were able to get a lower price from last year's by reworking on a 1 year basis. So this contract is about $11,000 lower than last year's.
Okay.
I was not part of the conversation around how that occurred, but it appears that by going year to year, we may get a better deal.
Okay. Well, we've had this contract for what, 3 years now? So.
It looks like it was approved for each of the last 2 years. This would be the third. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, I'd just like to make a motion to approve the contract as it's been presented.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Sandage, a second by Ms. Lindsay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the contract is approved.
Thank you.
We'll move to 11.07, Construction Manager at Risk Recommendation for Coltrane Web STEM and Beverly Hills Elementary School Replacement Project. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Dr. Kopicki, welcome Mr. Snell to the board. Tonight we are presenting to you the recommendation for the Construction Manager Risk for the Coltrane Web Beverly Hills School Replacement Project. The department received statements of qualification from 6 construction manager risk firms interested in participating as a part of this project. Those firms were Gilbane Building Company, Metcon Incorporated, Rogers Builders, Samet Brownstone Joint Venture, Vinoy Construction, and Wharton Smith G.W. Lyles Construction Company Joint Venture. A committee consisting of department staff and district leadership reviewed the statements of qualification and evaluated each firm on 6 different criteria. Those criteria were the experience in providing pre-construction and construction management services for similar projects, the approach to the project, the ability to meet the established schedule, qualifications and abilities of the key individuals proposed for the project, the client, subcontractor, and design references, and a location of an office in North Carolina at relative distance to the project site. Based on the submissions and the total scores of each firm, interviews were conducted with the top 2 scoring firms, which were Rogers Builders and Wharton Smith GW Lyles Construction. These interviews took place at the Technology Center on Monday, June 10th, and each firm had 45 minutes to present and was followed by a 15-minute Q&A. It is our recommendation that Rogers Builders from Charlotte, North Carolina be selected as the construction manager at risk firm for the Coultram Webb Beverly Hills replacement project. This project will use the same prototype for the newly built R. Brown McAllister School, which will be opening this coming school year. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Sandage?
Can you open the attachment? So my question is in relation to this Rogers. We've used them several times, correct?
Just once.
Okay. This will be our second time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, they sound very familiar. Can you tell me what was the difference between the last 2 that made it to the interviews?
I think the familiarity with the project, because we're going to prototype the school. So there's some efficiencies in doing that, in that they know the design, they know the program, they know the means and methods. They also have a very strong team on the ground locally here in Charlotte. Their COO lives in Cabarrus County. Several of the employees that work on the site live in Cabarrus County. We just felt like that they were a better choice of the 2 that we interviewed.
And then can you tell me what the point difference was if we used a point system for the 2?
I'd have to pull that for you.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I can provide that scoring sheet for you if you'd like. But the points, understand the points are for the tops, or for all 6 firms. The points are for all 6 firms. The interviews are for the presentations of the top 2 point winners. So.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. So there was a point difference in between the 2 based off of the interviews,
yes,
correct? Okay. And you have that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Ms. Lindsay?
Just wondering if there were any board members that were included in the interview for these.
No, they were invited but not able to attend.
Okay.
Mr. Walter?
Yeah, I appreciate the outlook here, or the presentation, and how you explained how you went ahead and selected these folks. Who makes the decision on the prototype? Is that already been? So that's already been made. Is that told to them ahead of time?
Is that told to
the people that are?
Yes. So as a part of the qualification summary that we put out for everybody to accept.
Mm-hmm.
It is written in that summary that we will be utilizing a prototype design of a previously built school, and we even reference what school that is.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, everybody's aware.
Mr. Floyd?
This ties into probably our next agenda item as well. Is there savings by using, since we're copying the last school that was built, by using the same people that already have their toolbox out and their drawings done and all that?
It's hard, obviously, with escalation and construction costs to say there's going to be savings over the actual contract value and what that costs to build. I think that there are efficiencies in what we do by utilizing them for this project in time, and time obviously is money, as we all are aware. What that equates to in another 2 years when this project is scheduled to open, that's yet to be seen. Mm-hmm.
Ms. Sandage?
I'm good.
Anybody else? Okay, board members, we need a motion to approve the construction manager at risk recommendations as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Floyd, a second by Ms. Escobar. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that recommendation is approved.
Thank you.
We'll move to 11.08, the architectural contract approval.
Thank you, board members. I am here tonight to present to you an architectural contract for the Coultram Webb BHS Beverly Hills replacement project. This year we are utilizing the solicitation process allowed to us by General Statute 143-64.31 for procurement of architectural, engineering, and surveying services, which is allow a multi-year issuance of requests for qualifications for these services. On June 5th, of this year, the Construction Department and Facilities Maintenance Department issued this RFQ, and it was listed on both of our websites for people to respond. The Master Architectural Services request for qualification sought professional turnkey design services for a range of projects, including renovations, capital construction, and roofing projects. The anticipated construction budgets for these projects are up to $55 million for capital construction and up to $5 million for re-roofing. The RFQ does not have a specific project, but it gathers qualifications from the firms for potential future projects with a defined timeline, which is 3 years allowed by general statutes. Upon all the submissions we received as part of the RFQ process, we reviewed those proposals, and upon that review, and the nature of this project as being a clone project, we would like to recommend Yates Christbury Hughes as the architect for this contract for Cultural Web Beverly Hills Replacement School, in the total amount of $1,175,000. Contract for
Any
contract
questions,
is
board
attached.
members? Ms. Sandage?
So this one sounds familiar too.
Yes, ma'am.
How many times we used them?
This will be our 4th project with them in the last
In recent years, yes.
And did I hear too that they would be able to use a current design, and that's what's okay?
Yes, ma'am. By using a clone project is more advantageous. Obviously, use the original architect for the project you are cloning.
And that does not save us money, from what
Yes,
I
ma'am,
understand.
it does.
Oh, okay.
This contract amount is approximately $618,000 less than the project we paid for R. Brown McAllister Design Services.
And you said we had a pool, and then we narrowed it down to a couple, and then we interviewed those same process. And
You don't interview through this process. It is just you choose whoever is most qualified based on the statements of qualification they submitted on. We had 4 architectural firms: YCH Architects, Mosley Architects, Adams and Associate Architects out of Statesville, and Becker Morgan Group out of Salisbury, Maryland, were the 4 architectural firms that submitted on this statement.
And this one is able to clone, and that's one of the main reasons why they were selected.
Yes, ma'am. And also they're able to meet our project schedule by being able to not have to go through the programming and process and preliminary design processes that had already been done for the previous project we're cloning.
And the other ones were not.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Walter?
Yeah, I'm still confused on the process. So we did an RFP.
Yes.
So request for proposals, right?
RFQ.
Or qualifications.
Qualification based.
Do we still not have to select those companies that are going to notify those companies that were selected or not?
No, you're not required to. I mean, you basically, once they issue the statement of qualification, there's a criteria. It gives the relative work experience. It gives, again, their financial information. It's like a regular statement of qualification that they complete, and all those firms filled out based on that summary of projects saying, hey, we might want to be a part of those groups of projects when you go and choose who you want to use.
And all 4 firms that submitted are qualified to do the project.
Right, but did you notify them that they qualified or they didn't qualify, or?
They're qualified, and under the 3-year, we are allowed to use any one of those firms over the next 3 years.
I guess I'm just not quite familiar with that process. That doesn't make sense to me. As far as you would think you'd have to notify them, and then what?
Why would you have to notify them?
Well, they submitted something to you. If I have a company, I
yeah, but it
submitted
was
my
not
qualifications.
So the submission was not a project-specific submission. It's for any project over the next 3 years that we may do and say, hey, you're going to be a good fit for this. We think that, and we go back and we look at the list of who submitted, and if they have, then we can choose them.
But if they didn't, and somebody else is interested, how do they get? They're excluded, right? Is that what you're saying?
They had an opportunity to submit on the RFQ, and they did not.
Then we're not making a notification. Something.
And it's not uncommon. I mean, during the course of that period, from when we issue the statement out, we'll have firms after the fact call and say, hey, we want to be a part of that. When is your next issuance? And we'll let them know. So then they put it on their calendar and they submit their statements.
Okay, I don't know if somebody's interested, they'd have the opportunity to either bid it or put it in a proposal for a project. And I don't know if I'm really comfortable with holding things for 3 years like that. So, all right, thank you.
Mr. Eisenhower, is there anything wrong with the process that you see in front of you this evening on this RFQ?
No, I think it's well with the statute.
Thank you.
Any other questions about this, board members? Okay, I need a motion to approve the architectural contract for Coltrane Webb STEM Beverly Hills replacement project.
So moved.
I need a second.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Floyd, a second by Mr. Treadaway. All those in favor say aye. Opposed?
No.
Let's do a hand vote on that. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All that are opposed, raise your right hand. Okay, that's a 4-3 vote. Okay, that is approved. Yes.
I apologize. I want to thank you guys for the presentation. I do not think lightly of your work. I appreciate all the time and effort that you guys put into these projects. I know it's not easy. Thank you so very much.
Okay, board members, we'll move to 11.09, the standard form of agreement between owner and construction manager.
Yes, so on April 8th of this year, the Board of Education approved G.W. Lyles Construction Company as the construction manager at risk firm for the Mary Frances Wall Pre-K Center replacement project. The Department of Construction, in conjunction with Johnson Allison Horde, has reviewed and negotiated the terms of the A133 2019 standard form of agreement between owner and constructor. Tonight we are requesting the approval of the A133 2019 agreement between Cabarrus County Schools and G.W. Lyles Construction Company. Once approved, this contract will be amended twice, once for the guaranteed maximum price of the demolition package and a final time for the balance of construction package. We anticipate these packages will be presented in the coming months to this board for their approval. And that is all I have. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions, board members?
And there is no dollar value attached to this contract.
Hearing none, I call for a motion that we accept the standard form of agreement as presented.
So moved.
I need a second. Second. I have a motion by Mr. Floyd, a second by Ms. Escobar. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, that's a 4-3 vote. That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move to 11.10. Central Cabarrus High School kitchen plumbing renovation with Mr. Chuck Taylor. Good evening, Mr. Taylor.
Good evening, board members. Dr. Kopicki. I'm here tonight to ask you to approve the bid as submitted. The project was presented in 23-24. Board of Education approved it. It went to the Board of Commissioners. They funded it. We've bid it out. It's for the Central Cabarrus renovation of kitchen plumbing. The infrastructure there is 54 years old. It's failing. We have several places under that slab where it's undermined. That means that water's leaking out, washing out the soil underneath it. That's a serious problem. The school itself, under the 10-year plan, I believe we're at least 10 years out. We have to do something to make sure this kitchen's functional and serves its purpose. So I'm asking for you to approve the lowest responsible bidder, LCJ. Are there any questions?
Any questions, Mr. Walter?
Yeah, this is again a couple months behind. They had 82 days, I guess, under the terms there to complete the project. We don't have that much time before school starts. Can you go into explaining to, can they get it done, and if they can't get it done, how is that going to impact the kitchen operations there?
Yes, sir. That 82 days we put standard on most projects, especially ones that we're doing through the summer. The contractor has assured me that he will have the invasive work done. There is some surface mounting that may be going on at the end of the project, but at this point I have no reason to believe that we won't be finished before school is open.
Any other questions, board members? Okay, I call for a motion that we approve the kitchen plumbing renovations as presented.
So moved.
So I have a motion by Ms. Escobar, a second by Mr. Walter. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that has been approved. So we'll move to 11.11, approval of bid for Wolf Meadow Elementary School roof replacement.
Okay, we've got a roof at Wolf Meadow needs to be replaced. I'm recommending that we take the bid from AAR. They are a company we've used in the past, reputable company, and they are a company that are willing to work with us. Are there any questions?
Any questions, Mr. Walter?
Can you just explain the alternate number 1 and why we would or would not take that?
So alternate number 1 was placed in there prior to all of our investigations. And what that does is allows us to overlay the roof, cut the membrane that's there now in place, lay it flat without removing it, and just covering it with a new membrane. You're allowed to do that twice. You're allowed to roof any commercial roof twice, okay? However, we've discovered that there are several sections that won't hold up if we do that. They need to be completely rebuilt. There are a few sections that we could, but we can't do it comprehensively. It'll have to be a section at a time. That's why we won't take the complete alternate 1.
Any other questions, board members? Ms. Escobar?
Wolf Meadow is a unique school as far as its design. So there's separate buildings that don't, I'm guessing it's just the main structure that's getting a roof?
No, ma'am. It'll be the complete building.
Like all the branches out and everything?
Yeah. Actually, Wolf Meadow and Mount Pleasant are the same design. The difference is there's an addition to Mount Pleasant of the cafeteria.
The front and the back have been reversed.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Okay, board members, I call for a motion to approve the bid for the Wolf Meadow Elementary School roof replacement.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Floyd, a second by Ms. Escobar. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, that is approved. We will move to 11.12, approval of bid for Cox Mill Elementary School roof replacement.
Okay, so Cox Mill Elementary's in the same boat. It needs a new roof. I believe anybody that goes in there or has worked there will more than agree with me. We're recommending the approval of Davco Roofing, another company that we've worked with extensively, do a great job for us. One thing I would like to bring up just for your knowledge, on both of these roof bids, we saw 9 for Wolf Meadow bidders and 13 on Cox Mill. So that tells us that things are moving along better in the economy and we can start seeing more reasonable pricing. Everything upticked with roofs, and for some reason it's coming back down with roofs.
Any questions? Mr. Walter?
Same question. You have an alternate number 1. Explain what that is and why we would or would not take that.
So alternate number 1's a good question, and it's an interesting one. Along with what I just said, this is for a higher rated insulation board. It gives you a higher insulation factor than standard board. So the economy has changed so much in the last 2 years that now this we expected to be a add. We expected it to come in at a higher price. It actually came in at a deduct. So now we're getting a better quality board for less money. We're taking the alternate.
Any other questions? Ms. Sandage?
So thanks for gathering all of this information. Of course, I truly appreciate the lowest responsible bidder. So thank you for always pointing that out to us.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, board members, I call for a motion for us to approve the bid for the CMES roof replacement.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Floyd, a second by Ms. Sandage. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That is approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Board members, we're going to move to 12.01, where I need a motion that the board convene in closed session to consult with an attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege, including consider confidential personnel matters pursuant to General Statute 143-318-11A6.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Floyd, a second by Ms. Lindsay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are now in closed session. Thank you.